I'd been invisible in Seoul's most prestigious corporate tower for 8 months, just another intern in navy blazer and borrowed confidence, drowning in my mother's medical debt while executives like Junho Park walked past without seeing me at all. Then I made one mistake. I said no to coffee with the most desired man in the building. And suddenly, Seoul's most ruthless corporate shark could see me. He didn't just see me. He became obsessed. This is how refusing one cup of coffee with a gorgeous executive led to the most dangerous, all-consuming love affair that rewrote both our futures and proved that sometimes being invisible is safer than being seen by the wrong man. Or in my case, exactly the right one. The glass elevator climbed to the 43rd floor of Sterling and Associates, and my reflection stared back at me in polished chrome, 26, exhausted. Wearing a blazer I'd bought at a second-hand shop in Itaewon because I couldn't afford the boutiques in Gangnam. My leather portfolio was a university graduation gift from my mother who'd worked 3 jobs in Lagos before we immigrated to Seoul when I was 12. She died 6 months ago owing $437,000 in cancer treatment bills. Bills that were now mine. Bills that kept me up at night doing calculations that never worked out in my favor. First day as marketing intern. Don't mess this up, favor. The elevator doors opened to marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Seoul, like it was something you could own if you were powerful enough. People moved with purpose here, expensive shoes clicking rhythms I couldn't afford to learn, tailored suits that cost more than my monthly rent in the cramped studio I shared with my younger sister Amara. New intern orientation is conference room B. A woman in Prada walked past without looking at me. Down the hall, 3rd door on your right. I wasn't expecting anyone to look at me. I'd perfected invisibility over 8 months of working my way through university, 2 part-time jobs, and my mother's final year. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant no one asked questions about why my clothes were off-season or why I ate the cheapest items from the cafeteria or why I sometimes fell asleep at my desk during lunch breaks. Invisible meant I could survive. The orientation was standard corporate machinery, benefits I couldn't afford, policies about fraternization I'd never need, expectations that felt designed to weed out anyone who wasn't already wealthy. I took notes on everything. For other interns sat around the table, all of them confident in ways that suggested trust funds and safety nets I'd never known. One more thing, the HR director said, her smile professionally distant. Sterling and Associates maintains strict professional boundaries. Relationships between staff and executives are discouraged and must be disclosed immediately to avoid conflicts of interest. I almost laughed. As if someone like me would ever be noticed by an executive here. As if I had time for anything except survival. That was before I met him. The break room on my 3rd day became my sanctuary. 6:47 in the morning, the floor was empty except for the hum of expensive coffee machines and the view of Seoul waking up below. I sat by the window with my lukewarm instant coffee, the free kind from the supply closet, reviewing market analysis reports for the campaign I'd been assigned to support. You're here early. The voice came from behind me, smooth and confident with an undertone of something I couldn't identify. I turned and immediately understood why the other interns had spent the past 2 days whispering. Junho Park stood 3 feet away, and photographs from the company website hadn't done him justice. 6'1", tailored charcoal suit that moved like it was part of his body, dark eyes that assessed everything with surgical precision. Korean features sharpened by what had to be a personal trainer and probably a genetic lottery I'd never win. His hair was styled perfectly, his jawline could have been carved from marble, and when he looked at me, really looked at me, I felt my carefully constructed invisibility crack. I work better before the chaos starts, I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. He sat down across from me without asking permission. Up close, he was even more devastating. A small scar bisected his left eyebrow, the only imperfection on an otherwise perfect face. You're the new marketing intern. Favor Okonkwo. He knew my name. Executives didn't know intern names. Yes, sir. Mr. Park. Junho, he corrected, setting down a coffee cup from the expensive cafe on the 1st floor. The one where drinks cost 12,000 won. More than I spend on food for an entire day. We're not that formal here. I prefer to maintain professional boundaries, Mr. Park. I closed my folder, already planning my escape. Men who looked like Junho Park and new intern names were dangerous in ways I couldn't afford to explore. But thank you for the welcome. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Or challenge. Most people probably didn't contradict him. Of course. Well, if you need anything during your internship, my office is on this floor. Acquisitions Division, corner office. He stood, picked up his coffee, and walked away. I released a breath I hadn't known I was holding. Over the next 2 weeks, I perfected the art of avoiding Junho Park. I learned his schedule. He arrived at 7:15 every morning, left at 6 exactly unless there was a late meeting, took lunch at his desk on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I adjusted my routes through the office to never cross his path. I ate lunch at my cubicle. I took the stairs instead of the elevator if I saw him waiting. I was so careful. But Junho Park was more observant than I'd given him credit for. You've been avoiding me. His voice made me jump. I was in the break room again, 6:47 a.m. on a Thursday, thinking I was safe. He sat down across from me with that expensive coffee, his expression unreadable. You take alternate routes to avoid passing my office. You eat lunch at your desk even though there's a perfectly good cafeteria. You leave at exactly 5:47, which is 13 minutes before I typically leave. My heart hammered against my ribs. I've been busy with work, Mr. Park. Junho. His jaw tightened slightly. And you're not busy. You're strategic. The question is why. I met his eyes directly, channeling every ounce of confidence I didn't feel. Because I'm here to build a career. Not to become another statistic in a workplace romance that ends with me losing everything I've worked for. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then something in his expression softened. That's a very specific fear. It's a statistical reality. 73% of workplace romances end badly. 61% result in one party leaving the company. And 100% of the time, it's the person with less power who suffers consequences. I kept my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. I've worked too hard to become a statistic. Junho leaned back, and I watched him process what I'd said with the same sharp intelligence he probably used to dismantle business competitors. You think I'm pursuing a workplace romance, aren't you? You know my name. You've memorized my schedule. You're sitting here at 6:47 in the morning waiting for me. I'm pursuing a conversation with the most interesting person I've met in 5 years, he said quietly. The fact that you're also beautiful just makes it more complicated. Heat crept up my neck. Flattery is manipulation, Mr. Park. Truth is truth, Miss Okonkwo. He stood up, picking up his coffee. But I respect your boundaries. I won't pursue what you don't want. He paused at the door, his back to me. However, if you ever change your mind about that conversation, just conversation, nothing that threatens your very impressive career trajectory, my door is open. After he left, I stared at my reports without seeing them. My heart was racing, palms damp with nerves I couldn't afford. I'd come to Seoul to survive, to pay off debt that wasn't mine, to build something my mother's death wouldn't make meaningless. I didn't have time for gorgeous executives with observant eyes and voices that made me forget every careful plan I'd ever made. But avoiding Junho Park became harder when he started appearing everywhere. Not pursuing, he'd kept that promise. But present. In meetings where my team presented, sitting in the back row, his attention focused on the work, not me. In the cafeteria during the lunch rush, sitting with his own team but somehow always at a table where I could see him if I looked up. In the hallway late at night when I was leaving, his office light still burning, his silhouette visible through glass walls. I started noticing things I shouldn't notice. How he stayed late every Wednesday to mentor junior associates, his voice patient as he explained complex acquisition strategies. How he brought coffee to exhausted assistants during deadline crunches, remembering everyone's orders without asking. How he defended a female colleague in a meeting when a client interrupted her, his voice cold steel as he explained that his team deserved respect or the client could find another firm. I noticed how he read during lunch breaks, not business journals but novels, literary fiction with worn covers suggesting multiple readings. How he was fluent in 4 languages and would seamlessly switch to help international clients feel comfortable. How his rare, Genuine smiles were nothing like his professional ones, how they transformed his entire face into something warm and approachable and devastatingly attractive. I noticed that he never looked at other women the way he'd looked at me that first morning. Like I was a puzzle worth solving. A mystery worth unraveling. And I hated that I was noticing. The project crashed on a Friday night at 11:34. 3 months of work, our entire marketing campaign for a $40 million client, corrupted by a server error. The presentation was Monday morning. My supervisor had left at 6. My team members had families to get home to. It was just me, my laptop, and the crushing certainty that I was about to lose everything. I'd been rebuilding files for 4 hours when Junho's voice made me jump. The lights are still on in your section. He stood in my cubicle entrance, tie loosened, jacket discarded, looking unfairly attractive despite the late hour. His shirt was rolled to his elbows, showing forearms that suggested he did more than sit behind a desk. Server crash. Lost everything. Presentation Monday. My voice cracked. I'd been holding myself together through sheer will, but his presence, his concern, made my carefully constructed walls splinter. I can rebuild it. I just need time. Show me what you had. Mr. Park, you don't need to. Junho, he corrected, already pulling up a chair beside me. Our shoulders almost touched. And yes, I do. 2 people can rebuild faster than one. Show me the framework. We worked side by side for 6 hours. Junho wasn't just observant. He was brilliant. He remembered details from presentations months ago, pulled data I'd forgotten existed, restructured arguments with a strategic mind that made everything sharper, better, more convincing. We fell into a rhythm, anticipating each other's thoughts, finishing each other's sentences, building something that was better than what we'd lost. At 4:17 a.m., we finished. The presentation was perfect. I leaned back in my chair, exhaustion and relief flooding through me in equal measure. Thank you. I don't know how to repay this. Have breakfast with me. I turned to find him watching me with an intensity that stole my breath. His dark eyes were bloodshot from screen time, but still sharp, still focused entirely on me in a way that made my pulse race. Junho. Just breakfast, favor. We've been working for 6 hours. I'm hungry, you're hungry, and there's a place 2 blocks away that opens at 5. Just colleagues who pulled an all-nighter. Nothing that violates your very reasonable boundaries. Every logical part of my brain screamed no. But I was exhausted, and he'd just saved my entire career, and something about the soft pre-dawn light filtering through the windows made me feel reckless. Just breakfast, I agreed. Just colleagues. Just colleagues, he repeated, but the way he smiled suggested he didn't believe it any more than I did. The restaurant was small and family-owned, with mismatched chairs and the smell of fresh-baked bread filling the air. Junho clearly knew the owners. They greeted him warmly in rapid Korean, shooting curious glances at me that suggested I was the first woman he'd brought here in a while. We ordered too much food. Kimchi jjigae and fresh pajeon and rice that tasted like home even though Lagos had never served Korean breakfasts. We ate in comfortable silence at first, then Junho asked about my background and I found myself talking. About growing up in Lagos before my family immigrated to Seoul when I was 12. About my mother's 3 jobs, her determination to give us better opportunities, her cancer diagnosis that came too late. About my younger sister Amara, who was brilliant and angry and blamed me for not saving our mother even though I'd tried everything. About the debt that felt like drowning, the crushing weight of $437,000 in medical bills that kept me awake at night running calculations that never balanced. Is that why you're so guarded? Junho asked quietly. You watched your mother sacrifice everything and it still wasn't enough? That's oversimplifying. But not wrong. I met his eyes across the small table. My mother was brilliant. She could have been anything. But she loved my father, and he left anyway when I was 8. Then she loved us, and that love meant working herself to death trying to give us opportunities she'd never have. I learned that love is expensive. That it costs everything. That I can't afford it until I've built something stable enough that it can't be destroyed. Junho was quiet for a long moment. Then, my father built an empire. Married my mother because their families had business connections, because merger made more sense than love. They never loved each other, but they stayed together for appearances, for the company, for obligations. I grew up watching two people exist in the same house without ever really seeing each other. He traced patterns on the worn table. I learned that success without connection is just expensive loneliness. That you can have everything and nothing at the same time. Something shifted between us. A recognition. An understanding. We're both scared, I said softly. Just of different things. Yeah. Junho's voice was rough. We are. We finished breakfast as the sun rose properly over Seoul, turning the city gold and beautiful and full of promise I wasn't sure I could trust. When Junho walked me to my apartment building, his car and driver following at a discreet distance that suggested he did this often, I felt something dangerous blooming in my chest. Thank you, I said at my building's entrance. The security guard was watching us with open curiosity. For everything tonight. Favor. The way he said my name made it sound important. Like it meant something. I know you have rules. I know you have plans. I respect that more than you probably realize. But I need you to know I'm not going anywhere. I'm not asking you to choose between your career and knowing me. I'm asking you to consider that maybe you don't have to choose. He left before I could respond, and I watched his car disappear into Seoul's morning traffic with my heart pounding against my ribs and every careful plan I'd made feeling suddenly insufficient. Monday's presentation was flawless. The client signed immediately, praising the strategic approach, the innovative angles, the comprehensive market analysis. My supervisor pulled me aside afterward with words like exceptional and fast track and partner potential that should have made me celebrate. Instead, I couldn't stop thinking about Junho Park. He was everywhere and nowhere. In meetings across the office where I could see him through glass walls, his focus absolute as he dismantled competitors with surgical precision. In the break room at 6:47 a.m., reading his novels, looking up when I entered with a small smile that never pushed for more than I was willing to give. In my thoughts constantly, annoyingly, persistently, making me question every plan I'd built my life around. I lasted 3 weeks before I broke. I found him on the executive terrace at sunset, a space I'd only recently discovered while delivering files to a senior partner. 43 floors up with Seoul spreading below like scattered diamonds, the city alive and glittering and full of possibility. He stood at the railing, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, watching the city with an expression I couldn't read. I've been thinking, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Junho turned, and the hope in his eyes was almost painful to witness. Yeah, about statistics. And plans. And the difference between my mother's choices and mine. I moved closer, closing the distance I'd maintained so carefully for weeks. My mother loved a man who didn't see her value. She sacrificed herself for love that wasn't returned. But you. I stopped an arm's length away. You stayed all night to save my project without asking for anything in return. You respect my boundaries even when you clearly don't want to. You've never asked me to be less ambitious, less focused, less myself. I don't want you to be less anything, Junho said quietly. His hands were clenched on the railing like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for me. I like you exactly as you are. Brilliant, driven, guarded, fierce. All of it. This terrifies me. I know. I have a 5-year plan. I've never deviated from a plan in my entire life. I'm not asking you to deviate. I'm asking you to expand it. Add one more variable to your equation. He took a step closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. I'm asking you to let me be someone who supports your ambitions instead of threatening them. Someone who stays when things get hard. Someone who sees you, really sees you, and doesn't want to change a single thing. My breath caught. And if I say yes? If I let you in? Then we do this carefully, Junho said, his voice intense. We keep it private until you're ready to make it known. We maintain absolute professionalism at work. We build something real that doesn't compromise either of our careers. We prove that it's possible to be ambitious and connected, driven and vulnerable, successful and in love. In love. My voice was barely a whisper. I'm getting ahead of myself. His jaw tightened. But yes, favor. Eventually. If you'll let me. I'd spent 8 years building walls, constructing defenses, protecting myself from becoming my mother's cautionary tale. But standing on that terrace with Seoul glittering below and Junho looking at me like I was the only thing that mattered in his carefully constructed world, I made a choice that terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. I closed the distance between us and kissed him. Junho froze for half a heartbeat, shock, maybe, or disbelief that I'd actually made the choice. Then his hands came up to cup my face with a gentleness that contradicted his obvious restraint. He kissed me back like I was precious, like he'd been waiting months for this exact moment, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he pushed too hard or took too much. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. I've been wanting to do that since you told me off in the break room. That was 8 weeks ago. I know exactly how long it's been, favor. I know everything about you. How you take your coffee with minimal sugar and oat milk. How you organize files alphabetically even though no one asked. How you water the office plants every Thursday at 7:15 because you think no one notices. How you hum while you work, always the same song, something in Yoruba I don't recognize but have been trying to learn. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. I've been falling for you since the moment you looked me in the eye and told me statistics about workplace romance like you were presenting a business case for why I should stay away. You've been watching me? I've been noticing you. There's a difference. He pulled back slightly to look at me properly. Tell me I'm not alone in this. Tell me you feel even a fraction of what I feel. I'm terrified of what I feel, I admitted. But yes, you're not alone. His smile was devastating. Then we do this right. Carefully. On your terms. We were so careful. For 6 weeks, we were so careful it hurt. At work, we maintained perfect professionalism. No lingering glances, no casual touches, nothing that would suggest we were anything but executive and intern who occasionally collaborated on projects. But after hours, we built something extraordinary. Junho took me to hidden restaurants in Hyundai where the owners knew him by name and didn't judge the age difference or the obvious power dynamic. Art galleries in Samcheongdong where he explained pieces with an architect's eye, revealing the dreams he'd abandoned to run his father's company. Bookshops in Itaewon where we spent hours browsing, him in literary fiction, me in business strategy, meeting in the poetry section to share favorite verses. He told me about growing up in a house that felt like a museum, beautiful and cold and desperately lonely. About taking over the acquisitions division at 28 when his father had a heart attack, learning that success felt hollow when you had no one to share it with. About watching his parents die separately, his father in a hospital, his mother in their empty house, and wondering if he'd made the same mistakes, prioritizing power over connection. I told him about Legos, about the market where my mother sold fabric before we immigrated, about how I still dreamed in Yoruba sometimes even though I thought in Korean now. About Amara's anger, how she blamed me for not saving our mother even though I'd done everything possible. About the debt that felt like drowning, the calculations I ran every night that never came out right. How much do you owe? Junho asked one night as we walked along the Han River, the water-reflecting city, lights like liquid stars. $437,000. The number felt obscene in the open air. Medical bills. Treatment that didn't work. I'm paying $3,000 a month and it's not even covering the interest. Junho stopped walking. Let me help. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You can't just. Money complicates everything, Junho. It makes this unequal. It makes me dependent. It makes you free, he countered. Free to focus on your career instead of drowning in debt you didn't create. Free to make choices based on what you want instead of what you can afford. He cupped my face with both hands. I'm not trying to buy you favor. I'm trying to remove an obstacle that's crushing you. I need to think about it. Take all the time you need. He kissed my forehead. But please, actually think about it. Don't just refuse because you're scared. 2 weeks later, I let him do it. Let him pay off $437,000 in medical debt with a single wire transfer that took 90 seconds and changed my entire life. I cried in his arms for an hour afterward, overwhelmed by relief and terror and gratitude I didn't know how to process. "Thank you," I whispered against his chest. "I'll pay you back. Every cent. I swear." "I don't want you to pay me back," Junho said quietly. "I want you to be free. That's all. Just free." 3 months into our relationship, everything exploded. We'd been so careful, but someone noticed. A photograph surfaced on the company's anonymous gossip forum, Junho and I leaving a restaurant in Itaewon, his hand on my lower back, both of us laughing at something I couldn't remember but looked intimate and obvious and damning. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Whispers followed me through hallways. Other interns suddenly couldn't make eye contact. Someone left a printed copy of the company's fraternization policy on my desk, certain sections highlighted in yellow. Relationships between executives and subordinate staff are strictly prohibited and may result in termination. I was called to HR on a Tuesday morning. Then my supervisor's office. Then, finally, to Junho's. He stood by his window, every line of his body radiating tension. When the door closed, he turned to me with anguish in his eyes that made my chest ache. "I'm so sorry, Favor. This is exactly what you feared. What I promised wouldn't happen. It's not your fault." "It is." His voice was raw. "I have power here. You don't. You're the one who'll face consequences while I'll get nothing worse than disapproving looks from the board." His hands clenched into fists. "I won't let that happen. If it comes down to your career or this relationship, you choose your career. Every single time. I won't be the reason your dreams collapse." Something fierce and protective surged through me. "No." Junho blinked. "What?" "No," I repeated, moving closer. "I spent my entire life being afraid that loving someone would cost me everything. But Junho, you've never asked me to choose. You've supported every ambition, celebrated every success, pushed me to apply for opportunities one thought were out of reach. You paid off debt that was crushing me without asking for anything in return." I reached for his hands. "The people trying to make me choose aren't you. They're a system designed to punish women for being human. And I'm not giving them that power. Favor. I'm not choosing," I said firmly. "I'm fighting. We're fighting. Together. Because if I walk away now, I'm letting fear win. I'm proving them right. And I'm losing the best thing that's ever happened to me because other people can't imagine a world where women can be ambitious and in love." Junho stared at me for a long moment. Then he was crossing the space between us, pulling me into his arms, holding me like I was the only solid thing in a world that had stopped making sense. "You're sure?" Terrified, I admitted against his chest. "But sure." Then we go to HR together. Full disclosure. We document everything, that this is consensual, that you've never received preferential treatment, that I've recused myself from any decisions affecting your career trajectory. We do this completely by policy, completely transparent, so they have nothing to use against you. The HR meeting was brutal. They questioned everything, how we met, when it started, whether my project successes were merit-based or favoritism. I brought documentation for every achievement, every hour worked, every contribution I'd made. Junho brought in my supervisors who confirmed on record that I'd earned everything through talent and dedication alone, that he'd never been involved in any decision regarding my employment. In the end, HR established clear boundaries. Junho couldn't be involved in any decisions about my employment, evaluations, promotions, project assignments, compensation. We'd need to disclose the relationship to relevant supervisors in writing. And if I ever felt pressured or uncomfortable, I had direct channels to report concerns confidentially. It wasn't perfect. But it was official. Clear. Documented. Walking out of that meeting, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, but power. I'd stood in that room and fought for both my career and my relationship. I hadn't sacrificed one for the other. I demanded space for both. The office gossip died down eventually, the way gossip always does. People found new scandals, new drama, new things to whisper about. My work continued to speak for itself. I led successful campaigns, brought in new clients, earned recommendations that had nothing to do with Junho and everything to do with competence. And Junho? He kept every promise. He supported without smothering, celebrated without taking credit, loved without asking me to be less than I was. 6 months after that first breakfast, I was promoted to junior associate. My supervisor specifically noted that the decision was made without Junho's input, that I'd earned it through consistently exceptional performance. That night, Junho took me back to the terrace where I'd first kissed him. "I'm proud of you," he said, pulling me against his chest, as we watched Seoul glitter below like proof that impossible things could happen. "You built this yourself. Every bit of it." "Not every bit," I corrected. "You were there. Supporting, encouraging, believing in me even when I doubted myself." "That's what love is," Junho said softly. "Not sacrificing your dreams for someone else's. Not becoming less so they can be more. It's both people becoming better because they're together. Because they have someone who sees them completely and loves them anyway." I turned in his arms to look at him properly, this man who'd seen me when I was invisible, who'd fought beside me instead of for me, who'd never asked me to choose between my heart and my ambitions. "I love you, Junho Park." "I love you too, Favor Okonkwo." His smile was that genuine one that still made my heart race. "Think your 5-year plan has room for me?" "I think it might need a complete revision," I admitted. "Something that includes both corner office and maybe, eventually, more than just us." Junho's eyes widened. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying I used to think love was a distraction. A derailment. Something that cost everything and gave nothing back." I cupped his face. "But you taught me that real love, the kind that sees you, supports you, fights for you, isn't a distraction. It's fuel. It makes everything else possible." He kissed me then, soft and deep and full of promise, and I knew with absolute certainty that I'd made the right choice. Not the safe choice. Not the planned choice. But the right one. 2 years later, I stood in my new corner office, senior associate, marketing division, arranging books on shelves that were actually mine and hanging degrees on walls I'd earned through talent alone. My revised 5-year plan had worked, with modifications that were better than anything I'd originally imagined. Junho appeared in my doorway holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this." "Big day. Huge day." I took the coffee, kissed him quickly. The entire office knew about us now. Some people still whispered, but most had accepted that we were legitimate, that I'd earned everything myself, that love and ambition could coexist if both people were willing to fight for it. "You did this yourself, Favor." "I did it with you," I corrected. "There's a difference." That evening, in the apartment we now shared, equal distance from both our offices, decorated with both our books and both our dreams, Junho pulled out a small velvet box. "I've been carrying this for 2 months," he admitted, his voice rougher than usual. "Waiting for the right moment. But then I realized there's no perfect moment. There's just us and what we've built and what we want to build next." He opened the box. The ring was perfect, elegant, understated, a fusion of Korean and Nigerian design elements that honored both our cultures. "Favor Okonkwo, you terrified me when we met. You challenged everything I thought I knew about connection and ambition and what it means to really see someone. You made me better. You make me want to be better every single day." He took a breath that shook slightly. "You taught me that success means nothing without someone to share it with. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Will you let me be your partner in every sense of the word? Will you build the next chapter with me?" I looked at this man who'd stayed when it was hard, who'd fought beside me instead of for me, who'd never asked me to be less so he could be more. Who'd proven that real love doesn't require sacrifice, it requires 2 people building something bigger than either of them could alone. "Yes," I said. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, and I pulled him into a kiss that tasted like coffee and promise and future, and everything I'd been too afraid to want. We were married 4 months later in a small ceremony that fused both our cultures, traditional Korean elements mixed with Nigerian customs, creating something new and ours. My sister Amara stood beside me, finally understanding that loving someone didn't mean losing yourself if you chose the right person. Junho's best friend from university stood beside him, joking that it only took Junho 33 years to find someone who could match his intensity. Our wedding night, Junho carried me over the threshold of the penthouse we'd bought together, equal investment, equal ownership, equal partnership in everything. He set me down gently in the bedroom that overlooked Seoul, the city glittering below like scattered proof that impossible things could happen. "You're mine now," he said softly, cupping my face. "Legally, officially, irrevocably mine. And I'm yours the same way." "Equal partners," I corrected, smiling against his mouth. "Equal partners," he agreed. "In everything." We made love with Seoul as our witness, two people who'd started as invisible intern and untouchable executive, evolved through fear and courage and carefully negotiated boundaries into something neither of us had known we needed. His touch was reverent, worshipful, like I was something precious he'd fought wars to keep. Afterward, lying in his arms with his ring on my finger and the weight of our choices settling around us like armor, I thought about that first morning in the break room. How I'd been so certain that staying invisible was safer. How I'd believed that love and ambition couldn't coexist. If I could go back, would I change it? Would I maintain those walls, refuse that first breakfast, stay safely invisible? No, because that morning, terrifying as it was, led to this. To being seen completely and loved anyway. To discovering I was strong enough to fight for both my dreams and my heart. To learning that real love doesn't ask you to choose, it gives you the courage to demand everything. "Do you regret any of it?" Junho asked quietly, like he could read my thoughts. "How we started, what it cost, the fights we had to have." I turned to look at him in the darkness, this man who'd seen me when I was invisible, who'd respected my boundaries even when it hurt him, who'd proven that love and ambition could coexist if both people were brave enough to fight for it. "Not for a single second," I said. "Every hard choice led me to you. I'd do it all again if this was the ending." "This isn't the ending," Junho said softly, his arms tightening around me. "This is just the beginning." And lying there in the darkness, soul glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows, his heartbeat steady against my back and our future unfolding like pages yet to be written, I believed him. We'd been forged in fear and built on courage. We'd fought systems designed to make us choose and proven that refusal was possible. We'd taken the impossible, invisible intern and untouchable executive, and turned it into something real and lasting and worth every difficult conversation, every scary choice, every moment of uncertainty. In a city of 10 million people, I'd found the one person who saw me completely, who loved my ambition as much as my vulnerability, who proved that love doesn't require sacrifice when both people are willing to fight for everything. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was seen, valued, loved, and free. And that made all the difference. If this story made you believe that ambition and love can coexist, that being seen is worth the risk, and that real love doesn't ask you to choose between your dreams and your heart, hit that like button and absolutely smash that subscribe button for more intense romance stories that'll make you believe in impossible love. Drop a comment telling me, would you risk your 5-year plan for a love like this? And stick around because we've got more stories coming that'll wreck you in the best possible way. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. You're the real MVPs.